Welcome back to another episode of the Bearcat Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Meacham, former UC Bearcat basketball player from 1997 to 1999 under the legendary coach Bob Huggins, and I was fortunate enough to wear the iconic Jordan Brand unis during my time. You can follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Alex_Meacham. Meacham spelled M-E-A-C-H-A-M. The Bearcat Basketball Podcast is now presented by the Healthcare Management Group. Shout out to everyone at HCMG. Thank you for the support. Now, we are live here at Mio's in Clifton. And as usual, if we can give a huge shout out to the owner, Kelly, for making all this happen.
Kelly, way to go.
The rock star, Kelly. And usually my support staff who produces the podcast, Stu and Colin, are here, but they could not be here today. So if we could have a round of applause for our new assistant, Jake, a.k.a. J. Diddy. Now, after tonight's podcast, there are after the game, only 3 home games left. Now, we'll be here, I know, right? It's like, wow. We'll be back here on Thursday for another podcast. The podcast will be from 5 to 6 p.m., and we will be announcing who that guest will be on social media. Now, there will not be a podcast on Sunday for Sunday's game, but then the final home game, we will have a podcast. So far on the podcast, here live at Meals, we've had Keith Greger, Deontay Vaughn, Zach Tobler, Corey Blunt, Art Long, Donna Little, Yancey Gates, Andre Tate, Tony Bobbitt, A.D. Jackson, and James White. You can listen to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, and our YouTube channel, Shine One Media. Next week's show, once again, will be Thursday, 5 to 6 p.m. before the Wichita State game. Now, this next segment is sponsored by the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Cincinnati. They have a new flexible bachelor's degree that will allow you to graduate conveniently and affordably, and you will not lose any credit or have to start over. I'm excited to welcome in this Bearcat legend. And when I say legend, that's with all capital letters. He played for the Bearcats from 1984 to 1988 and currently ranks the number 6 all-time leading scorer in Bearcat history. He is in the UC Hall of Fame, received his degree in engineering while playing basketball. He's a very, very well-rounded person and one of the greatest to ever wear the red and black. I'd like to welcome in my guy, number 21, Roger McClendon.
Thank you. I appreciate being here. Again, thank you to the host, Kelly, and I guess Rich couldn't be here tonight, but thank you for allowing us to have the opportunity to share some of the history and stories of UC Bearcat basketball.
Absolutely, and yeah, I'm glad you said that. Shout out to Rich, who couldn't be here, recovering from surgery, and he's doing pretty well. First of all, how are you doing? You live in Louisville now, and you made the drive up. We appreciate that. How things going for you, Roger?
I can say wonderful. I mean, we've all been through this tough last 2.5 years through COVID, the COVID situation, kind of the social injustice that we've seen, and then the economic downturn that came with it. So just proud to be here. I got to say my family's healthy. I'm healthy.
Good.
Business is going well, so thank you for asking.
Talk about your family a little bit. As successful as you were as a basketball player, I think as a husband and father, you have surpassed your Hall of Fame career on the basketball court.
Yeah, I mean, as we all know, and I think this is probably relevant for everybody here, is, you have to start from a foundation, and typically that's the people that are important in your life. And I was blessed to have, parents and grandparents that invested in me early. They taught me values, they taught me right from wrong, and they told me I could do and be anything I wanted to be. They didn't put any constraints on me. And the biggest thing that my father taught me was about critical thinking.
Okay.
Thinking for yourself. And so, it is as you know, with your dad and mom, that foundation helps you catapult you in the right direction.
Very important.
Yeah, so I'm proud to be part of that tradition of thinking about what I call F squared, C squared. It's something that I developed later in life.
Okay.
And as a geek engineer, my wife probably cringes every time I talk about this as a geek, but it's about F squared, faith and family, and C squared, community, then my career. And that's kind of how I tried to live my life. And so I still use that F squared, C squared to be that guiding light for how I live my life.
Sure. Love it. Love it. And we're going to jump in and talk about your history of, going from Champaign, Illinois to Cincinnati to Louisville. But I first have to ask you, because I know in here there are a lot of Bengals fans. Did you watch the Super Bowl?
I actually did. I did watch the Super Bowl.
I think everybody, that's a bad question. Everybody watched the Super Bowl. Bad question. Did you cheer for the Bengals is my question. And when I tell you that they have a Nerf gun over there and objects, she'll throw something at you if you're not careful.
I think I know where you stand because we had this conversation. And
I'm in trouble. I'm in line to get hit with the Nerf. Yeah, I better.
So I'm gonna get out of the way because they know where you stand. But no, I definitely am a Cincinnati Bengal fan when it comes to the game, and looking at Joe Burrow and his ability as a young leader to kind of galvanize that team was special to watch because the last time they were in it, I was here in the city. I lived here in the city.
Okay.
So I was working in the city. So I remember 1989 and the game there and all the excitement. So it was great after 30 plus years getting the Bengals back in the Super Bowl. So
absolutely. And I think one of the great things, and a lot of people are here to not only hear you, but eventually go to the Bearcat basketball game. But sports brings people together, right? I think like nothing else, sports can bring so many people together in all the things that we've been through over the last 2 years. It seemed like this city, just everyone was getting behind the Cincinnati Bengals, and that was exciting to see, and people were in a good mood. Unfortunately, the Bengals couldn't win the game, but hopefully, with the Bearcats having a great season with football, and then the Bengals having a great season, that energizes our community, the economy as well, and people just are in a good mood, Raj, when the team's winning.
Absolutely. I mean, I know politics tends to divide this country.
Yep.
And so when you have sports and you're cheering for the same team, you can bring people together that way. And I think one of the biggest leaders that we've ever seen, and people may or may not agree, was Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
And there's obviously a connection. And you think about what he was able to do and bring people together around his character. And so, another leader here that I like to think about was Tony Yates.
Yeah.
Was another guy that could bring people together regardless of his background. And so sports is that place. Sports is that magic that you put everything else aside and you cheer for your team and you put your differences aside.
Yep.
And that's awesome.
Absolutely. And quickly, before we jump into, your history with basketball, this past season, the Bearcat football team had an amazing season. Amazing run. Coach Luke Fickell just signed an extension. Which everybody, we should be very, very excited for that. Being that I think the university has put themselves in a great position with, a lot of the different sports here at the university have a lot of high-level, high-character coaches, which is great to see. But this football team, it energized, like I said, our community, and I think bled into the Bengals run. But you being in Louisville, I'm sure you were watching from afar and watching this, Bearcat football team. Did you make a game this year too, also?
Absolutely.
But what were your thoughts on the season?
Well, first of all, kudos to this coach because he has the ethics and the values to say, I'm going to stay here. I'm not going to go chase a bigger job or a bigger name school. And when they come after you before the season's over.
Yes.
And
which they need to change that.
They do. They really do. But we know in the past, other coaches have not done that. They have abandoned their team and everything that they've created and moved on for more money in a bigger school. He did not do that. For whatever reason, whether it's his wife, his family values, whatever it is, he's here and he's making a message. And the other thing I'll say about him as a leader is look at his coaching staff.
Yeah.
look how he's developed and brought people along and, you know, continued to develop them and give them opportunities. And the third thing I'll say, if you watch his players, the players played for him.
Yes.
You know, he gave them enough room to have their own personality, to make mistakes, but they played for him. And that's always, to me, a mark of a leader, when they get behind you and follow you.
I agree with everything you said 100%. So when you were here as a Bearcat, what was the football team like when you were here?
Well, you know, there was an occasion where right before I got here, they had that infamous win against Penn State, who was, I think, the number one team in the nation.
That's right.
And they were rebuilding at the time. They had an incredible running back by the name of Reggie Taylor, who was in the business school. He may have gone on and played some semi-pro, but they were in the rebuilding years. And obviously this school's history going back to the 60s and the national championship teams, as some people may remember, is mostly a basketball school.
Yeah.
And so for football to now establish itself, and for the newer generation, it's now looking like a football school.
Yeah.
So I think that's an incredible transformation. They come a long way.
Yeah, no question. Let's go ahead and dive into your career. Like I said before, you're from Champaign, Illinois. Went to Centennial High School.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about your high school career and what type of player you were.
Yeah. So it's a great question, and I'll tell a little story here. Recently, my coach passed away. That was my high school coach.
What was his name?
His name was Coach Coleman Carradine.
Okay.
And he played for Western Illinois, and he was the #1 leading scorer at his college for decades. He may have just been passed up within the last decade. And he was a 4-year letterman in 4 sports.
Wow.
So this coach, this famous coach that
in college?
Actually in high school before going to college. And then he focused on basketball, but he was on a small college All-American. So literally, we would go into the gym. So a couple things, how he developed me. I would go to the gym about 5, 6 a.m. He would be there to open the gym up for me.
Wow.
I would proceed to pick up the basketball and go through all these drills, jab step left, jab step right, and converted me into a big man at a 6'4", letting people play with their back to the basket, to a guard.
Yeah.
And he would literally sit on the free throw line, shoot 40 or 50 free throws in a row and not miss, and the ball would spin back to him.
Wow.
So he taught me, like John Wooden talks about how you tie your shoes up and laces. He taught me how to hold the ball, where each of my fingers should be on the ball, the rotation of the ball. So it was very, very detailed, about what he could do.
Sure.
And so I absorbed all that.
Yeah. And those type of meticulous details, when you learn those things early, becomes, with so much repetition, just becomes part of your game, which obviously you became very, very successful, and you can trace that back to that attention to detail with shooting, ball handling, basketball IQ, all that stuff.
Absolutely. So, Doc Rivers, Isaiah Thomas, Chicago. I lived in New York before my dad got the University of Illinois job. So I was in New York, and then going into the 9th grade, I came to Champaign Centennial, and my dad searched for different high schools. He kind of interviewed people. And when I'll tell you more about that. So he interviewed people, including the coach. And so that was the school based on his evaluation, and the determining factor was Coach Coleman Carradine. And so it was not just about me when I talk about his character. He wrote letters from the last guy on the bench to the #1 player on the bench. He invested time, and if you really wanted to put the time in, he supported you. So that's what he did for every player. From Parkland Junior College, where he get people in, to going to Division I schools like University of Cincinnati. And that spoke a lot to him. Now, he hated to lose, and he would get in your face about nose to nose like I am with this mic, and let you know what you did wrong.
Right. Held you accountable.
Hold you accountable. Run you till your tongue hang out.
Right. Now, let me ask, so when I interviewed James White, I talked to him about a very special moment for him, and that was when he found out that he became a McDonald's All-American. Now, I think in 2022, the McDonald's All-American, I think, game is still a great honor, but I think back even James's time and your time, that was the creme de la creme. That was the biggest thing. When did you find out that you were a McDonald's All-American, and in that moment, how special that was for you?
Yeah. Again, I credit my coach for actually doing the due diligence to kind of promote me, right? Because it's really tough. I mean, Illinois has great basketball. You talk about Indiana, Ohio, Illinois basketball. And he was able to promote me early on. So I made All-State 2 years in a row. Ben Wilson, I don't know if you remember that name, who ended up getting shot in Chicago, and he was going to be the next Magic Johnson, and he was. He was that type of player, playing for Simeon.
And I think every great player, like the top player at Simeon, has worn his number since he's passed away. Did you know that?
From Derrick Rose? No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, every top player has worn
Parker. So you can keep going on and on about that machine.
They've worn his number.
Yeah, so that's the competition I was in, right?
Yeah.
I was downstate at the University of Illinois, Champaign, Centennial, and all the competition was upstate.
Yeah.
And it was a guy by the name of Kevin Gamble. I don't know if you remember Gamble. He played for the Celtics. He's 6'8", smooth as ice. Kind of reminds me of Dale Curry, kind of that type of player. Was a defining player. And the Springfield Lamphere, they just dominated. He went to Iowa. But my point was, they were a little bit ahead of me. My coach was the guy that promoted me, and I backed it up. And so my junior year, going into my senior year, I was in the running to be a McDonald's All-American, but I had to back it up. So we took the team for the first time in history to the state playoffs, the state finals. So that combination of winning, playing in some tournaments where I remember it was the coach for University of Kentucky, Joe B. Hall, came to see a 7-footer that was in Effingham, Illinois, and walked away talking about, can we recruit Roger McClendon? So you got to show up. You got to deliver, but the setup was because of my coach.
Nice. And so how did you find out you're McDonald's All-American?
They came in, and he told my dad, he said, Roger just made the McDonald's All-American team. Now, I'm a modest kind of guy, if you ever know me. I don't get too high, I don't get too low. And so I just took it with a grain of salt. I was like, okay, yeah, who's going to be there? Like, who am I playing against? So I already knew, based on the camps, too, that I went to. So I went to AFB, the All-American camps. So I don't know, Bolton and Kroner.
What's that?
BC camps, Bolton and Kroner. 5-star camps. And so playing against Delray Brooks and the guys ahead of me that were McDonald's All-American. So competing there gave me that next leg up, too. So a combination of all of that got me there. But, yeah, I just took it with a grain of salt.
Yeah. Now, in the McDonald's All-American game, correct me if I'm wrong, but you played with, on the team, was Danny Manning was on your team?
Danny was on my team.
Yep. That was a high-scoring game, 131 to 106.
Yeah. And we were putting the ball up. I mean, you know how those All-Star games go.
No defense?
It was Rivers. It was
David Rivers that went to Notre Dame.
David Rivers. John Williams that went to LSU. And I think he had he looked like Magic at the time. As before he got really big and they put him down low, he was playing point guard at about 6'8", from Crenshaw in L.A. So, I mean, we played 2 games, one on the East Coast, and then we got Poly Pavilion with actually you met John Wooden, the coach of all coaches, was the guy that was in our ear talking about values and all those kind of things. And so it was a really great experience, not just the basketball, but the leadership development, what it meant in your responsibilities, what you should be expecting going to the next level. It was really a wonderful, fantastic time. And the story that I tell, we were modest, as far as how we grew up. And literally in some of those camps, when we went up to 5-star, and I didn't find out this till later, but my dad slept in the car. He would go to the bus station and, wash up and all that kind of stuff. But
oh, wow. While you were at the camp.
And I didn't know that. While I was at the camp, he at the time, because we needed, he slept in the car.
Yeah.
And never missed one of my high school games. Made every one of my high school games.
That's special.
Yeah.
That's special, man. Yeah, I'm sure as you're raising your children, you would do anything for them, much like your father sacrificed a lot for you. So I understand that. Now, I want to talk about the recruiting process. I'm always fascinated with how a player ends up at a certain school, right? So like I've said, I've talked to Tony Bobbitt, Donald Little, a lot of different former Bearcat players, and everybody's journey's kind of different. So with you, Roger, being a fantastic high school basketball player, McDonald's All-American, how did you end up playing for the University of Cincinnati and for Coach Tony Yates?
It's a great question. So again, I'll talk about the discipline. So we set up a list of 25 questions for each coach. and his staff. We vetted those coaches.
Your father.
Yeah, my father helped me set it up.
Man, he
We
was
kinda
meticulous,
created-
man.
we
I
created
wouldn't
that
want to
list.
deal with Pops, man.
And it wasn't all about, like, one of the questions was, would Roger be allowed to wear facial hair, like a mustache or a beard? And it's an honest question.
Yeah.
You know, and it's an ideological question, right? It's about, and his argument was, as you're growing up as a young man, you should have choices that you make for yourself.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be imposed on you.
Right.
And so he asked this question to Rolly Massimino. You remember Rolly Massimino?
Yeah, Villanova, right?
Yeah. And literally in the living room, I thought I was going to break out into a fist fight.
Oh, wow.
because at that school, you know, no facial hair.
Yeah.
No questions asked,
Yeah.
kind of a
And
tradition, that was it.
And there were a lot of schools like that
It was
at that time.
Indiana was like that. I mean, we talked
that's
tonight,
right.
the phone on Bobby Knight. He sent a telegram, and it was like, ask that question, okay, deal's done. You know, move on to the next school. So you want to match your values, what you believe in. You know, it was a holistic decision, not just about basketball, not even just about the engineering school. It was about me being able to grow as a young man into an adult, right?
Sure. So through the interview process.
25 questions. We boiled it down. Like, you know, Duke was on the list. A lot of people, I mean, I had over, you know, you can imagine, UCLA, all these offers. So when we talked about the engineering program, it got really tight. So the final 5 was University of Illinois.
Okay.
Unbelievable engineering program. They started the computers, EMPI, and the computer systems way back in the day. They were building long, you know, before you had a computer. It was Vanderbilt.
Okay.
A great, nice engineering program. University of Louisville,
Okay.
the speed school. University of Cincinnati, and Georgia Tech.
Okay.
So all those fit that combination of coach, engineering, even like this metropolitan area. Like, what are you going to do if you don't make it into the NBA?
Sure.
You want to be able to work, you know, have a job and have that exposure. So all those things came into play, and so those were the final 5. So how we got from there was, I really looked at Cincinnati and thought they were on the bottom of the list.
You did.
Well, they were 3-25.
Right. Yep.
But there was something about the history that made me think twice. You know.
With Oscar. And
So it was between Georgia Tech and Cincinnati.
Okay.
So Bobby Crimmins, everybody ever heard of Bobby Crimmins?
Absolutely.
You know, fantastic. Loved him. Bruce Dalrymple, you know, John Spider Sally, the guard that they had, Mark Price.
Uh-huh.
So I went to the visit, fit right in. They showed me engineering, you know, everything about it seemed right.
It
So
fit.
that were the right ones, I thought, at the time.
Okay.
But what got me over the hump was a dream. Like, I was laying down and I thought about Oscar. And I thought about bringing a championship back to Cincinnati.
Yeah. Yep.
And what would that be to be able to turn around and get back to the winning days of the 1960s and what Oscar and all those guys,
Sure.
Shucker and all those guys talked about. So that, I love challenges, and I wanted that challenge.
Love it. Love it. Can you speak, obviously, you know, one of our legends, Tony Yates, has passed away. Not only a tremendous basketball coach, great recruiter, but even better person. My interactions with Coach Yates through my years, going to Tony Yates basketball camp, to when I played for the Bearcats, I mean, just a tremendous human being. Can you speak on, you played for him, but can you speak on Coach Yates?
Yeah, and everything you said, plus, you know, I actually met him when he was at University of Illinois before he got this job.
Because he was an assistant
He was
at
assistant
Illinois.
at Illinois. And what I learned was that he got back to his roots to be able to take, you know, as a player and lead them to the championships of the 60s, 61, 62, and then come back and be a coach and try to do that. There was something special about that.
Yeah.
But coach was way bigger than basketball.
Absolutely.
And if you talk to all his guys, you know, Myron Hughes is here tonight. Shout out to Myron, one of my teammates. The guys like that he recruited that were leaders just demonstrated and really showcased his values, you know, and that commitment. So he hated to lose, just like I hated to lose, and my high school coach hated to lose. He kind of wore his emotions a little bit on his sleeve, you know, about, you know, having that chip on your shoulder, getting that Bearcat pride back, and fighting. And that he had to fight because he went to the military early on, before, so he was a little more mature when he came back to go to college. But he was a leader. And, he would do anything for you if you followed his, kind of philosophy and did the right things that you were supposed to do. He would do anything for you. And he'd make tough choices. If you didn't do it, you had consequences. And he stood by that. And so I love the fact that he was a value-based person. His value standards were extremely high, from graduating to committing to what you want to do, and how hard we wanted to work to get to what we wanted to go. So, so I shout out to his family, and really a big loss to the community. And he's done a lot more outside the community, even after he finished his basketball career as a coach.
And I thought it was important at that time, in that era, that the University of Cincinnati not only hired a former player, but also a black coach to lead the University of Cincinnati, which there weren't a ton. I mean, we're seeing this in the NFL right now, where they're, having issues with the hiring process. But in that time, hiring, Coach H, I thought was very, very important, for the university.
Yeah, I think, it's always a challenge to figure out how you get momentum in that. People talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and what that means. We saw the BLM movement, everything that was happening. And, you go back to those times where you get that opportunity as a coach. And, it's a breakthrough opportunity. So you're not only coaching for yourself.
Oh,
you're coaching for everybody else. And
absolutely.
Little history. So the first African-American coach that actually learned the game and studied under the inventor of the game was John B. McClendon.
Okay.
Right? And so fast break basketball, what he actually wrote rules in the game. The four corners, which some coaches get credit for, he had that in his repertoire.
Yeah.
So there was people before him that stepped in to have that opportunity. Coach McClendon studied under Naismith, the inventor of the game.
Yeah.
He integrated Kansas. He was the first one.
Wow.
When he jumped into the pool, they emptied the pool out before anybody would get in. And then he came back the next day and jumped in the pool, and they did it again. So he had to fight through that. And even when he got his degree, he couldn't coach certain teams. He couldn't coach white teams, right? So there was a history of people that came before that allowed Coach Yates to get that opportunity. And he tried to make the most of it. I mean, he worked hard every day.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump into your first year, 1984, 1985. You played with a lot of great players, one of which is here. You mentioned him earlier. If you can go ahead and give him a shout out.
Yeah, shout out.
Make sure we show some love here. So
yeah, shout out to Myron Hughes, my big man, set the meanest screen in the world.
One of our greats, Myron Hughes, in the building.
And a three-point shooter, rebounder, and most of all, MBA. I think you got your MBA in business. Close. Business leader, worked in the community. I mean, just a great person and a great teammate. So thank you for being here. And his lovely wife, Sherry.
Sherry's in the house.
Always, a superstar herself.
TV star.
Yeah, absolutely, TV star.
You played alongside also some other greats, Cedric Glover, who's doing also great in the community, working at, I believe, Jeff Weiler in Fairfield.
Yep.
He's doing great things. Ramel Shorter, who's one of my favorite all-time guys because I could look him eye to eye when I was at basketball camp at 11 years old. And he's still living in Chicago, doing some great things from a mentorship standpoint, not only working for the city of Chicago, but mentoring a lot of young men there that really need it. Derek McMillan. Who else? I'm talking. Who else?
Joe Stiffen.
Yeah.
Tony Wilson. Donnie Rule.
Donnie Rule,
yeah. Keep going. Jeff Flynn. Doug Keckman, my buddy.
Yep.
Brian Helm.
But as you mention all those names, though, as much as I think about successful on the court, like all those guys are doing great things, business and community as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a reflection of I say Coach Yates for sure, and people in their family that supported them along the way, and you'll hear all different stories. Like if I tell a story about Ramel Shorter, I mean, he's the only person I can know that can walk between the vice lords and the disciples, and they won't even mess with him. Walk right between them. So understanding the gang life and the reality of how you grow up and not get caught up in that. is phenomenal. And sports and basketball, his coach, Sonny Cox, which is a famous legendary coach.
Legendary in Chicago.
Was able to develop those guys and keep them literally off the streets because the basketball was a way out for them.
Yeah. Romel's a great guy. I had an opportunity to interview him.
Oh, you got to bring him back.
Oh, yeah. Romel's one of my guys. So, looking back that first year, you averaged 12.4 points a game. You guys were in the Metro back then. Great conference, though.
Oh.
I mean, there were some players.
State, Memphis State at the time, Tulane, every game. South Carolina, I mean, these guys were monsters. They're big guys, And so, good thing we had Myron Hughes that first year to kind of,
Your first year, you guys finished 17-14. Played some big games that year. I'm looking here at the schedule. At UK.
Yeah, that was a tough one. You could go to Rupp Arena.
Who was on that UK team that year?
Kenny Skywalker. Jump Kenny Skywalker. We were looking at his bottom of his shoes most of that game.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I bet. What was the score of that game?
We got beat pretty good.
A lot to a little.
We got spanked.
Myron's shaking his head. Now, one of my favorite arenas in all of college basketball was Freedom Hall.
Oh.
Right? Freedom Hall, when we went and played, I mean, the fans in Louisville are great fans. I mean, it's not like in Louisville at Freedom Hall, it wasn't a late arriving crowd. They were there early. They were intense. Obviously, I think Cincinnati and Louisville have always had a connection and a great rivalry. Hopefully we can get that back. But your first year, you guys beat Louisville twice.
Yeah. It was, I remember Milt Wagner and Billy Thompson, and I think, they kind of let down a little bit. They come into Cincinnati and, they just got off of national TV. Maybe this is not a national televised game. So I give them a little bit of that, but we were trying to win.
Oh, yeah.
I remember stealing the ball from half court from Milt because he just put it out there. I was like, okay,
you're
just going to put it out there like that?
Yeah.
But yeah, we for some reason got up really high on those games and ended up beating them a couple times that year.
And you guys lost to Marquette
in NIT.
In NIT.
Yeah, that was a tough loss because that's the year Bobby Knight threw that chair across the floor.
Oh, that was the okay. That was the year.
So if we would have beat Marquette, I think we lost by a couple of points. We would have played Bobby Knight in Indiana.
At Indiana.
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for the NIT, kind of get to the NIT championship.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, after your first year, going into your second year, I think a lot of players, I can speak for myself, I felt obviously more comfortable my second year, especially from like a mental standpoint. I think the game started to slow down for me because everything just seemed so fast. Everybody was so strong. From your first year to your second year, you went from averaging 12.4 points a game to 17 points a game, and your leadership role increased. What was the difference for you? I mean, did you feel that more confident from a mental? You're already a high-level IQ player, but.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing about me was strength and stamina, try to get in the weight room and increasing my endurance. And the psychological side was we had leaders like Myron and Derek McMillan. These guys had been through the grind, They've been through the lowest of the lows.
Yep.
And so they created an atmosphere through their leadership that allowed me to flourish and not have that on my shoulders so much. And you don't know this until they're gone, right?
Right.
So when they leave, now you feel that pressure a little bit, and so you're looking for the leadership because leadership is not what you say, is what you do.
Sure.
And how you back that up.
Sure.
And so that became a challenge all the way through to my senior year. Is like carrying that load and that leadership load, and trying to keep everybody together, focused.
Yeah, and in the second year, you guys finished 12-16. And didn't make the NCAA tournament again. And I know you said coming into UC, one of your goals was to bring the Bearcats back to that national prominence, obviously get them to the NCAA tournament. And 2 years in a row, you guys don't make the NCAA tournament. How are you feeling, and how does that motivate you during the offseason?
Yeah, definitely. So a couple things happened. It was we recruited a great recruiting class that I think was ranked in the top 10, and because of a new rule. I don't know, it was Proposition 48. I can't remember the rule, but those guys became ineligible.
Okay.
So we had this great recruiting class. None of them can play. They had to sit out. And it really kind of destroyed the momentum that we had going into it.
Yep.
You know? And so the other thing that I had to battle was engineering itself. You know, being split to kind of be at the pinnacle of each was what I wanted. But in reality, you know, you come maybe average at best.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to bring that up at some point. For you, balancing academics in athletics, like you're capable of playing at the professional level. You have all the tools to do that. And I think a lot of guys will come to Cincinnati or other schools putting all their eggs in the basket athletically and sometimes don't focus so much academically. But for you, you wanted to be that same Hall of Fame person in the classroom. And being in engineering and playing any sport is very, very difficult. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, at the time, there was a guy by the name of Joe Neiman, Jeff Johnson, who went on to get his PhD in engineering, electrical engineering. And those guys knew how difficult it was, and they kind of had set the tone, at least with the professors, that it was possible. So I almost didn't come to Cincinnati because I had a meeting with one of the advisors over there and said, you know, you can't be in engineering.
And play basketball.
Yeah, you say, we can't do it. I was like, what?
Because there was no one before you that had done it?
Well, it was rare, very
Okay.
rare. And I'll give a new stat because I'm actually on the advisory board to the engineering school today. I just accepted a position to be back on the advisory board. So they gave me some new statistics. But at the time, it was very, very few. Now, there were some probably women and, you know, cheerleaders, and I can name a few because it was really small. So it was doable, but it was very, very difficult and challenging. And I think that advisor was not really doubting that I could do it. Probably, yes, doubting, but trying to warn me.
Yeah.
In the
Wanting
best
you
way.
to be, kind of like a mother, like, hey, be careful with
sure
this.
You want to do
you
this?
sure you
But
want to? Yeah.
It didn't come out that way. And again, I'm not one to back her down from a challenge. And that's the whole reason of my being, of looking at both Georgia Tech and, you know, talk about all those schools. Those are all engineering schools.
Yeah.
University of Louisville had the speed school. So that's something that I wanted and I was going to do. And so, yeah, it wasn't easy, but it was, I had to come in late to some lab, you know, do my labs and come in late to some practices. So it was the arrangement with my coach. And the players, I know sometimes maybe were like, well, how did Raj come in to practice late? You know, look at him. Well,
Yeah.
come on and take some engineering classes. You can come in late too.
Right.
So they made accommodations, you know, on going on the road, tutors, anything that I could do within the rules and the process, they allowed me to do.
Sure. We're live at Meals in Clifton with Bearcat legend Roger McClendon. And Bearcat fans, I do need to point somebody out, and I need everybody to give this person a round of applause because as Roger and I are here talking about the balance between academics and athletics, we have Lisa Holstrom who's here, who has, let me tell you, give her a round of applause, and I'm going to tell you why. As you watch a lot of Bearcat football, basketball players on those fields, on the court, where there are a lot of things that have to happen outside of that particular field or court, and academics is a big part of that. And Lisa Holstrom has been very instrumental, along with many others at the university, of helping athletes graduate, not only the current players, but also players that have left the university that have come back, and she's helped them graduate and get a degree from the University of Cincinnati. Show her some love. Lisa Holstrom, thank you for coming out. Oh, your husband's standing up for you. He knows. He's a smart man. But yeah, it's always a challenge, Roger. You're a high level, academic guy.
So here's what's happened. So, being on the board of the computer engineering and applied science, what we know now is that there's 64 student athletes that are in engineering right now. 64. And I could count on one hand, maybe two when I was there. So it's happening.
increased.
When I was looking at Northwestern, there were, out of the 15 guys that play on the basketball team, 8 were going to be doctors and 7 were going to be engineers.
Yeah.
But they were like 3 and 25, so they were trying to figure it out. But yeah, so all schools are not created equal.
Right.
But they did make it happen here.
Yeah,
for me.
no question. And to jump back into your career here with the Bearcats, and we were talking about the 1986 to 1987 season right now. You guys finished 12 and 16. You were averaging 20 points a game. Statistically, it was your best season, although the team didn't perform probably to what you had expected. Going into, I love asking this question because I love to find the mindset of a player going from your junior year into your last season, knowing this is it. Like everything you've worked for falls in line with this season. What's your mindset going into your senior year?
Yeah, I mean, setting those goals that we want to win, small goals to lead to big goals. So we want to win the conference championship.
Yep.
We want to compete. We want to get to the NCAA tournament. And so those goals, we don't want to, lose any home games. So you kind of set the goals at the beginning of the year, and even before that, your preseason working to get to that beginning of the year. So, and again, when that goals don't happen, it's hard. And you think about a business the same way. When things start to spiral, what's the character of the team? What's your character? You have to look in the mirror and say, what am I doing? And so that was a tough year. Toughest year of my life, probably.
Yeah. In your senior year, you averaged 15 points a game, which you dropped from 20, and I believe Cedric Glover was the leading scorer, that season. You had some new fresh guys to the mix, Lou Banks, Keith Starks, right?
Yep.
Lavertus Robinson.
Absolutely. Tons of talent.
So, big-time talent.
Tons of talent. Remember, they sat out the year before, so Elnardo, Givens, and those guys were coming back in and trying to figure out.
Because of the Prop 48.
Prop 48.
Which was a terrible rule. I'm glad they got rid of that.
Absolutely.
But that's a whole nother podcast.
Absolutely. So those guys, are part of the UC basketball legacy and obviously developed and moved on through that as Hugs came in the year after that year, right? And so, but for me, it was a little bit of turmoil because of leadership and alignment. And when you don't have alignment and everybody pulling kind of the same way and, just maturity and being able to do that, then you don't get the most out of your team. And that was a challenge.
Yeah.
And I tell you, the competition was fierce that year. Absolutely. In the Metro, I believe.
A great league. But you know what? A lot of those guys, I've interviewed Lou Banks, Lavertus Robinson, a lot of those guys from that time period. A lot of them point to you and your leadership and watching you, and it helped out with their career. So, a lot of guys, like you said with Tony Yates, like he was not only coaching for himself, he was coaching for a lot of other people. And sometimes you don't know at the time, you as a senior, obviously you're playing for the team, you're playing for yourself, but you're influencing a lot of other players, a lot of other people, and you had that impact.
Yeah, sometimes you don't know that until years later.
Yeah.
What happens, Even your dad, I talk a lot about, Mr. Meacham.
Thank you.
What he did for Suzanne and I, just being that person or that person people can look up to and model themselves after. So that was a privilege. And really I had leaders that I modeled. So that's kind of how I did it.
Yeah.
I think your character really comes out when you're tested, in crisis.
Yeah.
And most people, will tell you that's when your true character.
Yeah.
And so we had one of those tough years. I had to take a year, like a couple quarters off from engineering, because of the way it was going. So I had to go back and finish up another couple quarters.
Yep.
I took evening college. I went to school while I was co-oping. I took 3 to 6 credit hours every summer, every spring when I was in town co-oping. So, you try to do everything you can to take advantage of the opportunities you have and stay true to your commitments.
Yeah. Now, help me out with this. And I believe, Myron, you guys started, you guys were playing downtown. And then your last year, you went to the Gardens.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I remember those days going to the Gardens. What was that like playing at the Gardens? I was with a young high school player, and I was talking about the Cincinnati Gardens, and he's like, "What are you talking about? Does it still exist?" And I'm like, "Nah, it's gone." But
yeah, so Riverfront was like, even though we weren't on campus, it was like our home gym.
Yeah.
So that was a feel. It had our name on the court.
Yeah.
Had our colors, and so that was a totally different feel. So when we had to shift and go to the Gardens, that was kind of a psychological blow for us. It was like, I don't know, it was a premonition or something.
Yeah.
Playing Xavier, being the home team, but on their court.
Yeah.
So it was like really bizarre.
It was odd.
But at the end of the day, it shouldn't really matter. I mean, just like you play on the playground, but there was something there psychological. So I didn't really enjoy it very much.
Yeah, it was cold in there too.
Very, very cold. I think they turned off the heat because they knew we were coming in that year. Because I know there's no love lost between Xavier and Cincinnati.
Oh, so. no love lost. Now, your fourth and final season with the Bearcats, you guys once again did not make the NCAA tournament. So how did you're kind of balancing viewing your career, which you had obviously a tremendous career, but also not making the tournament. It's almost like two different things. How did you feel about those and balance out those two feelings?
Yeah, it was nightmarish a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Because, years later, I'll tell a story. So I'm in Louisville, moved to Louisville, and my daughter's playing volleyball, and there's a volleyball couple saying, hey, we're going to do this seminar, this little presentation, and it's going to be at Coach Crumb's house.
Yeah.
Do you want to come out? And I said, sure, I'll come out. And so I go into Coach Crumb's home, and he's there, and he greets us, and he says, Roger McClendon, let me take you to my basement.
Uh-huh.
Let me show you.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
This is the ring you could have had.
If you played here.
But in a respectful, in a respectful, joking way. And, same thing with Rolly Massimino. So the coaches that I turned down actually won national championships.
Man.
But it's not that you say, well, I should have changed my course and I should have done it. I met my wife, with my four kids at University of Louisville. I met Myron Hughes. I met Tony Yates. We fought to get a gymnasium back on campus. That was supposed to be there when we were there, but that was the beginning of building to where the UC was as national champions. And they're still striving to get there, but I feel as though I'm part of that legacy,
No question.
From Oscar all the way to Kenyon, all the way on. So yeah, it was the right decision for me.
Yeah, no question. And growing up, huge Michael Jordan fan. I was one of those kids that wanted to be like Mike. I'd put on the Michael Jordan sneakers. I'd go in the back, dribble with my tongue out, do all that good stuff. But Bearcat fans, I'm here to tell you, growing up, I wanted to be like Roger McClendon. I really did. And my dad, my mother and father built a court, like a small court in the backyard. And I always tell young people to visualize success. Like, really think about your dream. Visualize yourself. I wanted to play for the Bearcats when I was 9 years old. And I would visualize myself wearing the Bearcat uniform, hearing my name coming out in the court, and I would practice in the back, and I would shoot just like you. I'd jump up, kick my feet up to my butt, do all those things. And I wanted to make sure, and I've told you this before, but in a public platform here, I wanted to give you your flowers, Roger, that I looked up to Michael Jordan, but I also looked up to Roger McClendon, man. I want to thank you for inspiring this young guy, which eventually led me to play for the Bearcats. So if we can give him a round of applause. And he knows that's true. I'm not just feeding him bullshit right now.
I appreciate it, Alex. I appreciate it.
We had dinner in Louisville. I've told you that privately many of times.
Absolutely, absolutely. And your book, people know you're published, and your story of triumph and, going into hugs and saying, I want to be a part of this team. I mean, you've lived your values. I mean, you're a very humble guy.
Thank you.
But you're also a great leader. I love your process and discipline. I mean, your AAU program is second to none.
Thank you.
What you do
Appreciate
to develop coaches, not only the players that respect you, but the coaches that you develop. So you have a coaching tree that's
Yeah.
longer than a lot of people's here. So
Absolutely.
you know, but I know you
Thank
like
you.
Romel Shorter a little bit better than me, so because you can see him eye to eye.
I can see him eye to eye at 11 years old at basketball camp. But you know what's crazy? When I went to the Tony Yates basketball camp, they used to give you a basketball. It was a red, white, and black basketball. Remember that, Myron? And they would give you like a certificate for coming to camp. And I have all your guys' autographs.
Wow.
I still have that basketball. I still have that certificate. And I don't have it from any other camp. I didn't have it at Hugs. You guys just were a special group and meant a lot to me. And I know it meant a lot to my father. So I wanted to make sure I pass that along to both you and Myron. So thank you for what you guys did for Bearcat basketball for sure. And just to give you one more thing, and I have to say this. I have often called you the Magic Johnson of UC basketball. And I'm not even talking about the basketball court. I'm talking about the combination. I think before this, we were talking to Kelly, the owner, about meeting Magic Johnson and what a great person he is. I've had a chance to be around Magic Johnson several times. He is a tremendous father, husband, and businessman, Hall of Fame basketball player, and you built from that same cloth. And I really truly say that. You are like the Magic Johnson of UC basketball from that standpoint of kind of bringing everything all together.
I appreciate that, Alex. And, like I said, it comes from the leaders that I've had a chance to follow. So in my career, I came here to be an engineer, and I'm an engineer, right?
Yep.
And
No question.
I was also a basketball player. You're not just one thing, but my passion is about people and solving problems. And so I've had an unbelievable career. I just retired a couple of years ago from Yum Brands, one of the biggest restaurant companies in the world.
Wait, we can't let that go by. Roger McClendon just retired from working for Yum Brand for
24 years.
24 years. We got to give him a round of applause for that.
Yeah. And what it's taught me is humility, right? It's taught me to appreciate opportunities, to demonstrate leadership by not what you say, by what you do.
Yep.
People are going to follow you based on how you make them feel. Your responsibility is to develop others and bring them with you as you progress in your career. And I think about it as like playing for the next generation, which I'll get into in a minute. But I've been blessed. I've been all over the world, from Abu Dhabi, Dubai, China. We opened up the first green building restaurant under my leadership in Beijing.
Amazing.
Before, Beijing people knew about green buildings.
Amazing.
So it's been a long ride. And my CEO gave me that opportunity because I was good at my job.
Yeah.
Right? So I did my job. And that's the thing about basketball, do your job.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
In football field, do your job. But I've been blessed in business as well.
Just a young kid from Champaign. So what I like to do at the end of every podcast, I like to do some quick hitters, quick questions, quick answers. And this has become one of my favorite questions, and I do this with every player, and sometimes I get answers I don't expect. So my first question is, would you rather be MJ or MJ? And here's what I mean by that. Would you rather be Michael Jordan at the height of his celebrity and career, or would you rather be Michael Jackson at the height of his celebrity and career? Now keep in mind, Michael Jordan, I want to be like Mike, everybody, every young kid he's influencing. Michael Jackson's got grown men passing out his concerts. He can't go anywhere. Would you rather be Michael Jackson or Michael Jordan?
So I'm going to answer this because I'm a son of a philosopher, right?
Oh, this is going to be deep. This is going to be deep.
So Michael Jordan at the pinnacle of his career, nobody was better. But Michael Jackson at the pinnacle of his career was around the world leading people.
Yeah.
His songs about empathy and compassion and about changing the world for the better. And I think MJ has that perspective now, but I don't think he had it when he was at the top of his pinnacle of his career, because he could have made, I think, a bigger impact. Now, that I'm criticizing a little bit, but my point is, I think Michael Jackson did that.
Gotcha.
I mean, he changed countries, to think differently. I mean, and so I think that's the difference to me. your influence.
So can you moonwalk? Will
No,
you moonwalk at the end of the podcast for everybody? No?
I know you can moonwalk.
I can moonwalk.
You ever see him dress up? You got to show some of those pictures.
Stop. We're gonna go past that one. So during your Bearcat career,
Yes.
you can only pick one teammate. You can pick one teammate that you're going to go to battle with. So Roger McClendon and whoever you name, anywhere in the world, basketball, volleyball, business, you're going to battle. You've got to take one teammate with you. Who are you taking?
I'm going to have to take Romeo Shorter with me. Because, he's always going to have your back. Myron knows this. He's a fighter to the end.
Yeah.
And, although people won't maybe look at him as a business leader, he's one of the most accomplished leaders that I've ever met at 18 years old, what he's gone through. And I really want you to bring him on the show because his life and what he's lived and how he's given people advice and changed other young people's lives is off the charts.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have a PhD. He doesn't have an MBA, but he's a leader.
Love it. Love it. Great. So let's talk about this next question. Your game, when you played, how do you think your game would translate into today's game in 2022?
I think it fits brilliantly. In fact, I was probably a little bit ahead of my time because they could let little skinny guys like me run around with the basketball now.
For sure. For sure.
But no,
and guys are wearing short shorts again, Rod, so you fit right in.
So I just think it was a movement where Shaq and, the big guy, down low, pounded in, a little bit of slower game was kind of the norm. And, it started to evolve. And the game continues to transform.
Yep.
But now it's all about quick pass, get it, and 3 for 2. 3 for 2, do the math. If you're a math or an engineer, 3 for 2 works every time if you can shoot 50% from the free, from the 3-point line.
Absolutely.
Which I don't think I would have a problem doing.
When was the 3-point line adopted?
My junior year.
Junior year.
Yeah, my junior year.
What would it have been like if you had it the first couple years?
Myron would have been like, give me the ball, quit shooting from back there.
I believe that. Now, I've got a tough question for you. I really thought about this coming into the podcast. Now, anybody that really, really knows Roger McClendon, he's a very, very humble person, but yet he is overly competitive. So, my question for you, and I'm talking about Roger McClendon in his prime, if you were to play one-on-one in a gym by yourself against Oscar Robertson, who would win and what would be the score?
That's a tough one. So
this is the humble and competitive.
I have to tell the story. I have played with Oscar.
Did you play him one-on-one?
I did not play him one-on-one.
But you played pickup ball.
3 or 4-on-4. And so Oscar probably would have beat me up, so I think Oscar would have won that game, but it probably would have been close.
Okay.
So if I can endure the physicalness because he's a 6'5" guy that could play with the best of them.
Absolutely.
But I don't think he could guard me from the outside.
Yeah.
So that would have been a close game, but I think he would have got me.
Okay. You tell me the score. What would be the score? Playing to 10.
Playing how to 10?
Playing to 10.
10-9.
10-9. Woo. Okay. I like that. So have you had it, and let's talk about this current Bearcat basketball team. And I think we're in great hands with Wes Miller and his staff. Really a tremendous, tremendous guy. Have you had a chance to sit down and talk with Wes Miller? And if you have, what are your thoughts on him and his staff? Yeah,
we haven't sat down and talked, but he's opened up his basketball program to all the former alums in basketball, which I think is tremendous. He's got DeMar on his staff,
Excellent.
DeMar, and he's very gracious. But what I love about Wes is his idea of culture, values, how he wants to build the program. It's a long-term investment.
Yep.
He's going to do it the right way, and he's going to hold his guys accountable.
Yep.
But it also has this uniqueness of allowing the guys to have a little bit of freedom within a framework, which I love.
Yep.
And so I think he's got a lot of opportunity to grow the program, and I think they're above what they're like 5th right now in the conference.
I'm not sure, I
think they're right around there, 5th in the conference.
Okay.
I mean, Memphis is up there, SMU, Houston, but they're right in the upper 6 and 5, or up in the upper echelon. So I'm hoping they can, surprise some people this year.
Yeah. So, as a former player, as you are, going back to Fifth Third Arena, this is your first time to really see the Bearcats live this year
Mm-hmm.
under Wes Miller. And really, you probably haven't had a lot of opportunities to watch them on TV. But going to this game here, what are you looking for when you go to watch the team today?
Yeah. Well, you want to see that the players are playing for the coach and playing for themselves.
Yeah.
That the focus is not on individual, it's on team. That they are making the hustle plays, that they're doing the little things to win the basketball, the fundamentals. You can miss and make shots, but taking the right shot, right? And then just the demeanor, like when they're in the huddle, what kind of body language do you see? Is it positive body language?
Yep.
When you come out of the game, are you clapping for your teammates, saying,
Sure.
"Hey, let's go. Let's make sure you're doing that." So those are the little things that you're looking for. The big things you're looking for is execution and strategy.
Yeah.
What are you running? Like, because tonight when they go against Penny and Larry, the Hall of Fame coach,
Larry Brown.
yes,
Yeah.
and Jeremy, and all that powerhouse
Yeah.
that they have over there, they've got to be a unit in order to win.
Sure.
Because they're coming off a couple of big wins. They just beat Houston.
Yeah.
I think they got a 5-game winning streak. Memphis is no joke.
No joking. We're coming off of a tough loss to Tulsa, so this is a very important game. Lastly, Roger, before we close up shop here, when you look back at your career with the Bearcats, how do you look at your career?
I think I was just a little bit short, of what I think I really could do. Right?
Okay.
And, you can't change the past, but it makes you think about what you do with your kids, and give them opportunities. So I learned a lot from that experience. We didn't go to the NCAA tournament, but my daughter won 2 national championships at Penn State in volleyball. So I think about that and I say, what drives me? So I took all that energy and that emotion where I didn't accomplish what I wanted to, and I translated it into business.
Yep.
And I think I've been somewhat successful. I always hold myself back.
Very successful.
Somewhat successful. And I'll tell you one thing, and this is something that I think maybe the audience might feel. You never feel successful. When you're driven, I didn't even think Michael Jordan and all these guys, you never feel like you really made it, no matter how many games you win, no matter how many accolades. When you're self-motivated, self-driven, you always think you could do better.
Yeah.
You think about more games that you lost than what you won.
Yep.
And so when you have that's like a curse. It's a curse. It's a curse, but that's what you're born with. Man.
No question. Roger, as I said before, you're a Bearcat Hall of Famer. You're a Hall of Fame person. Once again, I want to thank you for inspiring me, 9-year-old, 10, 11-year-old kid in the backyard. And Bearcat fans, if you could give a round of applause for one of our Bearcat legends, Roger McClendon.
Thank you for listening. Alex, thank you for having me.
Always.
BOs, make sure you come back here next week, same time.
And I want to thank everybody out there for always, there are a lot of faces here that are always here, and we appreciate that. And hopefully this is a good part of your Bearcat game day experience, and appreciate everybody listening to another episode of the Bearcat Basketball Podcast. Go Bearcats!